listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator. I'm all about capturing and curating career and life stories as a meaningful way to celebrate a milestone moment like a big O birthday, anniversary, retirement, or graduation. And I'm at my best when curating photo books that move your memories from the basement or your phone or your computer to the coffee table, giving you and your family and friends access to these treasured memories for years to come. I also love curating and capturing life and career stories through this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? It's a series of interviews designed for people just starting out in their careers, people in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories of people who have been there, done that, so that they might be inspired with some new ideas, or maybe just comforted knowing they are not alone, that everybody starts somewhere and everybody goes through times of transition and times when they feel stuck. Today, I am very excited to be interviewing Andrea Andrews. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and Miss Kathy.
Andrea and I go back, gosh, I want to say 5 to 10 years, maybe?
Probably 10. I linked up with Women's Vision Foundation, I want to say in 2006 or 2007.
Yeah, we just reconnected. She had sent me a note in the last couple of weeks about a new venture she's a nonprofit she's part of, and from there I'm like, oh, you know what, I would love to capture your story. So that's why she's here today. And Andrea is the founder and creator of a travel and lifestyle blog called sallyj.com. So I'm very excited to hear about this new venture. Before we jump into today's interview, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Life Story Curator, a testimonial from one of their very happy clients.
Oh my gosh, if you're considering hiring Kathy Lawless to do a book for you, you need to do it. My name is Ann DuPont, and I'm chair emeritus of a nonprofit that's been based in Denver called the Leadership Investment. And after 20 plus years of being in business, we decided we had to celebrate and commemorate all of the great work we'd done and the impact we'd had in the Denver community. So we hired Kathy Lawless and Life Story Curator to help us do exactly that. And I've got to tell you, the result has been simply outstanding. We went into it with a little bit of fear, thinking, is this going to be too much work? Can we really take this on? And Kathy just made it absolutely painless. She was fun. She was creative. She broke the work into bite-sized pieces that we could really take hold of and get done. And she just made it a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughter along the way. And the feedback from the members of our organization, from the staff, the community, the volunteers, has simply been outstanding. It has really done quite a remarkable job of capturing the essence of everything we achieved over 20 years. So if you're thinking about doing something like this for your organization, for your career, for your family, I would highly recommend it, and I would absolutely say that Kathy Lawless and Life Story Curator is the person for you.
Before we get into what it's like to be a blogger, a lifestyle blogger, I always like to start with the icebreaker questions. So tell us, if you would, where you grew up, a little bit about your family dynamics, siblings, that kind of thing, and how you think both of those things, where you grew up and your family dynamics, how that shaped you as an individual.
Okay, for sure. So I was born in Wyoming. I say that because even though I moved here to Colorado when I was 2, Colorado natives are very serious about that status of being a Colorado native. So even though I went to elementary school and have had all my schooling and everything here, again, moving here as a 2-year-old, technically I am not a native. I am an only child. I was raised, my parents are from the South, from the rural South, both of them. My mother is an only child. My dad is the youngest of 6. Also my parents divorced when I was about 11. In terms of family dynamic, I have a stepmother named Kim who's been in my life the entire time, who's amazing. And my mom has had the same person in her life for about 10 years. And prior to that, a person for about 20 years. So very stable in that way. She's lived in both California and Washington state. So I consider both of those places to be home as well. I can tell you it's interesting being raised by an only child and the youngest of six, and that there are some similarities because the baby is usually spoiled and an only is spoiled. So I definitely got spoiled. But then also in the lessons that they teach, they're completely different. So with my mom being a woman and an only child, there's definitely lessons that she wanted me to learn, things that were important to her. For instance, if she were to die tomorrow, I have a pretty strong sense of where she wants to be buried, how she wants to be buried, where certain things are to go, how her affairs are to be handled. My father being one of six, having siblings and being of a larger family, I've had to force him to have some of those conversations, and we still aren't there all the way because he's like, it's none of your bit, you know, he just thinks about it differently. So I would say that that's a difference. I will say that my dad being one of six and them being all boys, me being a girl probably was a curveball for him, but I think the best kind of curveball for him. I think that I have softened his heart tremendously. He's a wonderful guy. We have a wonderful relationship. We communicate really, really well. He's one of my best friends, but he's an old school guy. So I think having a daughter has been a blessing for them. And then obviously with them being in the South and at some points the segregated rural South, I have that lens in my background, going even in the early 90s, the late 80s, going to the South in the summertime and not being able to go to the store in town, not understanding that from Colorado. I'd ask my grandma, you know, why can't we just go to the store like right there? And so stuff like that is also a part of my backstory and my history, which is interesting, that has kind of shaped and framed who I am. But all in all, I just want people to know that I come from an extremely loving, hardworking, loyal, like beautiful group of people who are faith-based. We build a lot of churches in my family, serve the community, just a really good group of loving people.
Wow.
So.
Well, that's a great summary. It really sets the stage for how you are as an individual. And because I know you, I'm like, that's perfect. That nails it exactly in terms of how those things influence, how I see those things in you. Even though I didn't know those things about you, I see all of that in you. And I loved your comment when you said you softened your dad's heart, you know, being one of six and six boys, boy. Yeah. And then having a girl. And, you know, so different, the environment being in the South, like you said, the segregated South, then to Wyoming, then to Colorado.
And
Wow.
let me just throw this out here because it is something that they often talk about too. My stepmom is from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So add that element into the mix, and that brings for a very interesting Andrea. So yeah, that's all I'll say. That's all I'll say.
Okay, so what activities did you do as a young person?
I was involved in lots of different things. I obviously, like I said, we built churches and stuff like that. So church was first and foremost, like not an option in my life. I don't have like the church hurt and some of the other religious issues that some people have who were like kind of forced to do it. And that I think stems from the fact that I didn't go to church. We built churches. So because I was in church leadership, I think that makes a difference for me. And my parents made it very clear to me, and so did everyone in my family, that people are people, and God or universe or Buddha or Allah or whoever you celebrate in that way are different. And so I don't have some of the hurt that some people have, because I realize that when I talk to people, because I'm also a ministry now, that often when they have a dissatisfaction or a breaking away from the church, it doesn't have anything to do with God. I always hear them say the priest did, or sister such and such did, or, you know, it's a violation of a person. It's never really about God, and I'm just grateful that I have that, because without spirituality, I do not exist. So I would say church was an activity. And then in terms of in community and making sure that people were being fed and all of that was going on. I played basketball, I ran track, I was in Future Business Leaders of America in high school. So I did all of those things. And then I've always been interested in singing and performance, and I played the viola. So that is kind of me in a nutshell. So I like classical music, but I also like R&B and gospel. I'm here to serve the community in any way possible, but I also will pray for you if you need me to. I can also be there in difficult situations for you and your family if need be. I'm a private person. I know how to respect other people's privacy. I know how to hold people in care during difficult situations. It's not, something that everybody is gifted with. I'm grateful for the gift. I count it a blessing to be able to be there for others.
Yeah. Wow. As you were, explaining some of what you've done, and there's so much. One of the things I wanted to say was maybe I should have asked, what haven't you done? What activities didn't you do? That might have been a shorter list, but I
So
love
much more. There's so much, Kathy, there's a lot of work to be done out here. There's so much more.
and there's so much that you just boldly step into stuff. So I just love that about you. So, okay, we're gonna shift gears just a smidge here. Introvert or extrovert or ambivert? Have you heard the ambivert term before? Probably.
Yes. So I would say combination of both, definitely situational, but at my core, introvert. I don't feed off energy from people, while a lot of people gravitate and come towards me. I draw energy from being alone. So excuse me, my favorite activity is floating in sensory deprivation tanks. I try to go at least once a month. When a lot's going on, I try to go at least twice or 3 times a month. And for those of you who have never done it before, I equate it to like if yoga and meditation were to have a baby in water.
That's what it would be like.
That's what floating is. I've been practicing for about 5 years. And it just really, really helps me center myself, center my thoughts, reconnect with myself in a way so that I can show up for others. So again, I'm never going to come in a room and necessarily take over the room. That said, when I enter the room, people notice me and the room shifts, if that makes sense.
But that's not something that you kind of demand.
I don't seek it, I don't demand it, but people do gravitate towards me naturally.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads into the next question then, which is on the fun meter, on the scale of 1 to 5, 1 being couch potato and 5 being the life of the party, where do you put yourself?
So I also struggle with this question when I got it from you. So both, right? Because I think that, and I've heard other people when I've listened to your podcast answer it this way. Like when I'm with my group of friends that I'm most comfortable with, I don't know that life of the party would necessarily be the descriptor of me, but to say that I make people feel comfortable and that they're going to have a good time, I think that's what generally what people will tell you is that I make them feel comfortable. When people come into my home, the one feedback that I've gotten is that it's comfortable and it feels like Andrea. I don't know what that means, but that's what people say when they come here. So I don't seek attention because it makes me nervous, actually. So probably not the life of the party. And some people, if I'm better one-on-one. Big groups can be challenging for me sometimes if I don't, it's either I have to be with strangers. I'm like with strangers, I don't know, it's different. Once I know people, I don't know what it is, but it gets weird sometimes, unless it's one-on-one for me. And I'm working on that. I can be socially awkward for sure. But where I felt like I had to be something to be in that room, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So was it really you, or was it me, or me and you? And yeah, what's the deal?
Or is it the environment, but something is off? That's kind of where I get the, like, but for the most part, like for people who know me and enjoy being around me, like we spend time. We spend a lot of time together.
Okay, so on the risk meter, same scale, 1 to 5, 1 being low risk taker, 5 being high risk taker, where do you put yourself?
So I don't know. I'll ask you, and I heard another lady, I thought it was interesting. So like professionally, I don't know that I always take the risk that I need to, but I've jumped out of a plane. I've just this summer in July went whitewater rafting in the Nile and swam and jumped in the Nile like nothing, and I can't swim. So,
Too high risk activities. Yeah.
so things like that, when it comes to traveling or having experience once in a lifetime experiences, like when I went to the Great Barrier Reef when I was 17, I went to Australia, couldn't swim. I should learn. It's not that I can't swim. I'm not a like lap swimmer.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable in water and stuff like that. But I put on went to the Great Barrier Reef. They put us out in the middle of the ocean. That was kind of my first time being in the middle of the ocean. So I'm like, this is not like the beach or a pool. Like I can't see the bottom. Like I don't think I want to do that.
Where's the
And
wall?
then, but just to tell you, at 17, I sat there and I told myself, you may never have this experience again. Like you're in Australia on a boat in the middle of the ocean and can see the Great Barrier Reef, which you don't know what it is. You never even heard of it. And I just put on a life jacket and jumped in the water. So in that way, I've always been that type of person. I've taken a lot of risks in love. Like I love hard. Like my best friend, I'll tell you, she's like, Andrea can love a stick. Like I just have like, I love people. And for people who have not been loved and who have trauma, I have been told that I'm overwhelming by those people. Like your love is so much. So that's interesting as well.
All right.
But I think that
it's Andrea.
I'm not risk adverse. I don't think I'm risk adverse, but I feel like when I look at
on a scale of 5, putting you
but
out.
when I look at people like yourself, like Christine Daspro, like Anne DuPont and others who I think have taken bigger risk, greater risk. I think that as you become an older woman and grow into self-awareness, you take different risks as a woman. I wish in my 20s I had taken different, but I was so afraid. And I had been told and preconditioned to do certain things because I was a girl and you can't do that as a woman, or you need to be soft and delicate. I guess those are some of the risks, even though I do take them now and I have taken them in my career. I wish I had done more of that.
Ah, okay. Okay. So you're looking back a little on that risk. Okay. I get it. Great. Well, I love those questions because look at the insight that we just got about you. So now as we hear your story about how you got to where you are, it's all going to kind of piece together. And it usually pieces together, right, when we look back. Very few people I've interviewed have had this grand master plan that worked out. They may have had a plan, but did not always did it work out.
Oh, I have written plans, honey. And we can laugh at all of them. We can go back. I have journals and it's good to read because fundamentally and from a values and intrinsic place, I've been the same person since I was 11. I read those journals. Who I am is definitely who I am, but it's good to see the growth. It's good to again look at the plans that you write and the people you thought would be there for a lifetime, and all of that stuff is interesting to go back and reflect on sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
I have a bunch of journals and they were just sitting there the other day. I'm like, oh, what should I do with those? I should throw those out, I thought, but
read them.
I should go back through them because
you will be surprised. You will laugh, you will cry, you will be like, oh my God, thank you. I'm not as stupid as I used to be or naive or whatever the word, because self-talk is important. But some of this, I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus, for growth. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to go back. I'm going to take your advice and go back and do that. So, okay, Andrea, well, we do have to keep going here. So
yes,
tell us what it's like to be a blogger, a travel and lifestyle blogger. And then we'll get to the, how did I get here part?
So it's a lot of fun for me. It's an awesome creative outlet. I've always liked to write. So when we go back and we think of all the things that we wanted to do growing up as a child, I have a couple of themes: music, writing, and community. And so I've never really gotten away from those things. And I've gotten really further than most. I've gotten some really awesome looks in the music, on the music side of things. And in community, I've also been able to serve and do some really awesome things in that capacity. But the writing wasn't something that I had explored in a very long time. I used to write poetry and short stories. I was that kid in elementary school and we had the opportunity to make and bind books. I loved those experiences. And so we wrote a book for our master's program when I was at DU for our capstone, because they didn't have an HR book that, well, that's what Bud said. I don't know if we believe Bud, because Bud's a smart guy, Bud Balanik, if you know him. So we wrote a book. And so that kind of gave me the, you know, being able to say I was an author, even though I was a co-author and it was assignment, it kind of got me into it. And then I went through a transition period that we'll talk through later, but I, through that period, hired a coach, and her name is Lori Hansen. Also met her through Women's Vision Foundation. And actually she was at the last meeting when you presented the book. So funny how that all works. That's really when she and I connected. That's not when she started coaching me, but that's when we made the connection. Coached with her, she sat me down. What do you want to do? Same kind of thing. Like, what is it? What is the thing? Da, da, da. So she actually got me there. She was the one who got me to start the page. And then I have a best friend in New York. His name is Ryan. We grew up together. We met in orchestra, and he lives in New Jersey now. And he is a financier, but also is a photographer. He has his own studio, is doing amazing. Ryan was the first person to call me a blogger and invited me to come out to Newark for the Black Arts Week. He was, at that time, his studio was just a studio, but he was showcasing some art there, and he was hosting a live exhibit. I don't remember the title, but it was paying homage to Black women and like their beauty and the essence of Black women. But he had connected me with some other influencers who were in the space to kind of introduce me to it. So he's the one who kind of planted the seed. And now in telling the story, so I have to fast forward a little bit. This was in 2019. So when I went to see Ryan, I went to New York twice in a week. Craziest thing I've ever done. You want to talk about a risk. So I had already booked a trip to take my mother to see a concert in New York for Mother's Day, because that's a thing that we do. We travel to see concerts. It's how I love on her. It's our love language. There was an influencer that I had been following who was having a master's class that Wednesday. We were going Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I was like, can I get to New York? I asked my mom, because she's a retiree from United. She was like, yeah, I can get you there. And she was like, I can't get you back, but there's a flight on Frontier for $40. So basically I can get to New York for $40.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, that's a sign. So I go Wednesday, come back to Denver, work Thursday, again, don't ask. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, spend my weekend in New York with my mother. But that master's class with Kayla Walker also opened me up. So that, I would say, that's what started me thinking, okay, I can do this. After seeing her, it was a master's class on how to take pictures and how to do social media with your iPhone. But I'm looking at her followers. She's Emmy nominated, yada, yada. And she and I have kept in touch. Actually, anyway, so great connection. So fast forward, then I talked to Lori. At that point, I had been doing different things on social media, trying different avenues to get my exposure up. And so the next thing is like, you either sell merchandise or you have to come up with a website. But either way, if Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you know, you hear it all the time, LinkedIn, if it breaks tomorrow, how are you going to connect and reach people? So that's kind of how, through talking to Lori, my love of travel, what I wanted to do for women ultimately later in life, that's how my lifestyle and travel blog was born. And what I want to do with it and how it will serve, you know, in the future, I'm sure we'll talk about later, but that's kind of how it was born. It was through the masterclass in New York, a friend who had an amazing belief in me to say, you can do this, because I came to New York 15 years ago, and like, you want to talk about a story? His story is freaking amazing. And working with a coach, investing in myself to have someone push me forward, someone objective outside of it. Because as you know, your family, your friends, different people, they don't always believe the vision that is given to you truly is your own. I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs can, and people going through transitions or whatever, when you get visions, dreams and stuff, that stuff comes to you and you can explain it. And there are people who love you and they have the best intentions for you, and they will not understand it. And they cannot talk you through it, and they cannot push you and give you the motivation that you need. So I had to pay someone to do that for me, and I'm grateful for it.
Wow, that's so cool. So it's like, you know, you have this thing in your brain niggling out there trying, trying to get out. And then a friend encourages you, but then you have some expertise that you pay for. And then it just starts to come together. And then finally.
Because I never thought of a blog. I never thought of a web, like I had seen it. And I built everything. I'm so proud of what I've been able to do. Like, it's templates. I'm not on WordPress or anything like that. I'm not C++ or, you know what I mean? But for what I've been able to do, considering that it wasn't even anything that was on my radar 3 years ago, I'm extremely proud of what I've been able to put forward.
Well, and you get to be doing travel and living a lifestyle. And then it sounded like also then you were making a movement toward what women could do. I mean, there's all kinds of purpose that you're putting forth with this too. So how cool is that?
Right. So basically my slogan is, hello, welcome to Travel, Explore, and Play with Sally J, where I am your host. And then like, ultimately I would like to go, like, I would like my own travel show long-term, like long game. I would like to host retreats and do some of the healing work. So I noticed that you have interviewed Dr. Cynthia James. She's another one that I met through Women's Vision Foundation. She's the reason why I went to DU. In her court and at the, what was the year, the annual, like big conference that you guys used to have every year, whatever that is. I went to her breakout session and she was like, manifest the craziest. And I was like, I want to go to DU, like never been on the campus, lived here my whole life. Like, and then like the next day DU started writing me and then I applied and then I went and they let me get a degree. Like they actually I have a degree from the University of, it's the craziest thing. So I would ultimately like to do some of the things that she does, like the different like healing retreats and stuff like that. She, I would definitely like to coach and work in that space in a different way, but I would like to have a traveling element to mine. Also, what I want to do is, so, and if you go to my website, you'll see all this, but like, I'm not single now, but as a single woman, and even if you're not single, as an independent woman, I'll say that, as an independent, free thinking woman, there will be times when you want to go and do and see, and there will not be people who want to go and do and see with you. And I think in previous generations, we would stop or we wouldn't go. And as I've explained my dream to people, initially my goal was to inspire African American women, Black and brown women to travel, to a passport is $150, $200 at the most if you do different things, make that investment and go see the world. And you'll see that it's a much smaller place and that, in America it can be difficult. It can also be great, but in other places in the world, we're viewed and seen so much differently in all of that. So, but in talking to people like you and different individuals about my dream, I came across a lot of white women who were married and had privilege in a different way, because there's a subset of independent women. I'm talking about women who are married and who are accustomed to having a partner, who were like, well, I would do some of that too. I've never traveled alone. I wouldn't travel. Like the thought of that was just like foreign to them. And then, so I say all that to say, there have been a couple of trips that I've taken where I've done stuff on my own, where while I had a good time, like I always was in constant awareness of my safety. So what I wanted to do is create an alpha woman's trip where it's 3 women and I'm the host, and we travel somewhere that everybody wants to go. And we have 3 or 4 excursions, but everybody goes alone on their own excursion, because I like to travel alone, right? So then you still have the safety in numbers. You're still checking in at night and there's a house full of people, so you can do that. But I want everybody to have their own room and everybody to have their own experiences. And then we debrief at the end. But I want to be able to create and hold space for those women who want to do things on their own, where in some places like the Middle East or certain parts of Africa, certain parts of America, if we're honest, it's just not safe for women to be. And to give another example, like, so I went to Glenwood Springs. Hanging Lake is a trail that I love to hike. I'd only done it in the summertime. I always wanted to go in the winter, could never find anyone to go with me. So I finally go up to Glenwood Springs because it's a place that I feel safe enough. I go there by myself pretty often. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go do Hanging Lake. Everybody told me I needed ice shoes. I'm like, whatever. So I get up there, I fall a couple of times, but I made it. And when I get up there, I'm rejoicing. I walk across the log, behind the waterfall. I'm crying. I'm praising God, thanking the universe, all the things, right? Have no cell service. No one knows where I am. That's fine too. Cause I'm out here being Andrea. I go, anybody who's hike Hanging Lake, there's those 3 steps and there's the railing like right towards the top, and then it's kind of opens up after that. Man, went to take that first step. Now know why you are required to wear ice shoes on a winter hike, because I almost died. Okay. Was in a full split. Thankfully, there was that pole up there, like my leg split the pole. If that pole had not been there, I would not be talking to you right now. I had to sit on my butt in sweatpants, not winter pants, regular old, they were from Banana Republic, but like Hanes, like sweatpants, just to give you guys an idea. I had to sit on my butt and slide maybe like half a mile down the hill because I was afraid if I slid, like I was gonna die. The dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. Also, the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. But out of those experiences are born like, okay, if I had been with a couple of women, like even if we had staggered, at some point we could have had a conversation about like, so at the top,
Yeah.
it's not safe up there. Like,
Yeah.
so that's kind of like how I would like to see it phased out without giving like huge, like step-by-step details. I just want to help women and, heal and travel. I've experienced so much healing through traveling. So I have that trip where I learned a lot about myself, right? It sounds crazy. A lot of people are like that, like, especially people who hike and do like adventurous winter, they're like, girl, like, are you out of your mind? Lesson learned, I wouldn't do it again. But I learned a lot about who I was as a person. Like when I sat down, the reason why I sat down is I said, well, you got up here. And so you're going to have to figure out how to get down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't see very many people. And when I got past the point where there was no railing and it was safe to stand up, there was a couple, and this lady gave me her ski pole and she was like, you can use it, just leave it by my car at the end. Like, that's just how the universe always is for me. It's always like that for me.
That is awesome.
So also I want to say, when I went to Singapore, that was the first time I had traveled internationally alone. And I was so scared I didn't get to see that city. And that's also why I wanted to create this space, because every time I hear people talk about Singapore, I am like, I have I don't regret much, but I have like this sense of like, oh, you really missed out on a great city because you were afraid to explore in a different way. So ever since that trip, I try to be more planful and mindful and get out there and not be so afraid of exploring on my own.
Yeah. Well, I just love your aspiration, and you're just putting your vision out there. You're going to manifest all of this. So that is so cool. So thank you for sharing where you are today, but let's talk now about how did I get here? So let's go back to that junior high school. Obviously at the time, blogging probably wasn't even a thing, right? But you did say you like to write and sing and you were, very active. So what did you think when you were in high school your career was going to be?
What it is now. So I was groomed to be an accountant. I started taking accounting courses in high school. I had enough credits as a senior in high school to not graduate. I had to take one class as a senior. So then I went to CCA and took, which is the Community College of Aurora, entry-level accounting classes as a senior in high school. I did like community outreach and like internships in high school with what was then Arthur Anderson. So
who connected you to accounting though? Did you have a teacher that's like, oh, you should really, this is a great career and this is why?
So I can tell you why. At the time, no. I can tell you that my teacher's name was Ed Salazar, the gentleman who took an interest in me. He made accounting fun. That was when you actually had to do like the actual ledgers, and you had each sub ledger, like the little booklets. I'm aging myself, and then you would have to do your like general ledger and your trial balance, but like all by hand. So he made it really fun. But from my understanding now, my father, even though my entire life he was a State Farm agent, before that, the reason why I was born in Wyoming, my dad was in the Air Force, and apparently he was an accountant in the Air Force. So I think it was a vision that he had for me, but that wasn't explained to me probably until maybe like 5 years ago, and I've been doing what I've been doing a long, long time. So I think that Also, I like to do hair. So if you want to know what I wanted to do in high school, I braid hair. I still do my own hair, and I braid other people's hair now still too. I wanted to do hair. And my father, at that time, especially coming out of the South, Blacks were teachers, they were, service people, they did hair, and he just wanted something else for me. To be honest, I probably would be a multimillionaire if I did hair. If I had started, no, I'm serious. If I had started at 16 and 17, like when I wanted, I would, because I know how much I pay and how much I've paid, especially Black women. All women pay a lot of money for their hair. Like, because I've had some friends, my white friends, and they tell me they pay $200, $300, $400 to get their hair dyed. I'm like, so just think about that. If you have a clientele of 60 or 70 people, a lot of beauticians make 6 or 7 figures. And now with braids and weaves and all the restorative hair stuff going on, I know some women who pay $1,000 to $1,200 for wigs. So trust me, when I say I could have been a multi-million-dollar doing hair, I could have. But my father did not want me to work a trade. It was extremely important for him, coming out of his background, for me to be a professional. And with my mother, I'm third generation on my mother's side of the family to have a master's degree. Like I said, this is me, you talking offline, but my mother worked for United, and her last assignment was the general manager in Portland, like was responsible for that entire station. So I had an example in the home, 2 examples with a State Farm agent, AKA you can call him a franchisee, but ultimately he's self-employed, ultimately. And then a mother who was high achieving. Like, it's one of the discussions that I have with my father sometimes, like, you really had a taste of entrepreneurship and you encouraged me to get a job. Like, but it was what he knew. It was definitely the message coming out of the South: get an education, go work the job for 20 years, get the pension. It was what they were told. It was what a lot of us were told and sold. And it is what it is. But I wanted to do hair. If you made me really think about it, I wanted to do hair in high school.
Wow. Hair and probably sing, right? You had all the singing in.
Yes, me and Beyonce were going to be friends, and we were going to braid each other's hair, and we were going to go on tour together. It was going to be amazing.
So you get the accounting degree. Did you
Yeah.
go right into your master's, or was there a break in there? And
I didn't. So I went to Bennett College, which is a HBCU. I have to speak on that and shout it out because I'm proud of it. And my dad is a graduate of the great Grambling State University. And so we give homage and we pay respects to historically Black colleges and universities. But coming from Denver, I was just like, this is cool. But I was just happy to be around Black people, and I was having way too much fun on private school tuition. So I came back, went to CU, and I started in accounting. I don't like accounting because of a historical perspective. So my degree is actually in finance. I'm a more futuristic, forward thinking person anyway. But because I had started my career in accounting, by nature, again, it's just how I got tracked, and I didn't really know how to advocate and speak for myself at that point. Got a position finally in finance after working for an organization for about 5 years, maybe year 6 is when I finally got my first look at finance. Did that for about 2 years. Was the wrong assignment. That was my first lesson in all money is not good money. That culture and fit matter a lot. They matter a lot. So I went and got my master's, but it was also during that time that my marriage ended. So I left my job of 9 years, separated from my husband. My marriage didn't end then, but I definitely moved out and got my own place and started my master's program in the same month in 2013.
well, all in the same month. Wow. All in 1 year is a big deal to make that kind of change. Wow. So, I got to ask, was there a tipping point or something that said, I need to make this change in my life? What?
Yes. A couple of things. I wasn't fulfilled in being an accounting and finance professional now that I had seen the finance side of it. And again, I think also, like I said, that had to do with fit. I think if I was given another finance opportunity at this point, professionally and with therapy and some of the other things that have occurred in my life, it would be a different experience, but that wasn't the right fit. But ultimately at that time, what I was looking at in my life is I kept getting myself into situations, because I'm gonna be self-accountable, where I don't want to say situations, but so a couple of things. When I did the 15-year breakfast for Women's Vision Foundation, when they had me be the speaker, going through that exercise, I learned a couple of things. I didn't want to be the spokesperson for all Black people, and that some of the experiences linked to leadership also showed me this, because I went to through Link to Leadership with some of my counterparts. The experience that I was having at CH2M Hill was not the same experiences that my counterpart, the place that they talked about and they worked at, I was like, what? So I had that going on. And then also there were instances where I didn't like how I was being treated by others. And I couldn't figure out why people thought it was okay to walk all over me. And so I wanted to change that. And what I learned through Women's Vision Foundation is that you're responsible for your reputation in career management. Now, this is the change that I had to make. So I had a belief that I had been resting on that I don't want to call a limited belief, because it wasn't. I think sometimes what we call limited beliefs sometimes are beliefs that we have that have been given to us, but we don't have the situation awareness, or we haven't had the life experience yet to quite understand what we were told. So we operate with the knowledge based on the experience that we have. So one of the things that I was told as a child is that you let people promote you. You don't go around promoting yourself, right?
Mhm.
I took that very literally, not with the understanding that, yes, in order to achieve, it is best when Kathy says, hey, have you seen the things that Andrea is doing? Or, hey, have you thought about Andrea for that opportunity? Or, hey, I know someone who may be a good fit for this project. You should call Andrea Andrews, right? In that, though, you are responsible for your own self-promotion. And so if you don't understand that, then you go around looking for validation and acceptance from people, thinking that it's promotion, and it's not. So I was going around looking for acceptance from people who didn't deserve it, number one. And number two, like, it just, their acceptance or approval didn't matter. So that was kind of what I wanted to get out of. Like, why don't people see me the way that I see me? Why don't people respect me the way I respect me? Why don't people respect my boundaries because the way that I want them to respect my boundaries? And I realized through a lot of work that the reason why people weren't doing it is because I wasn't doing it.
Mhm.
But I didn't know any better. I was operating with all that I had. So.
Yeah. And then it all came to a head at one point, and you.
Right, because when you don't have peace at home, I didn't have peace at work. And like, so what happened at work is I had a gentleman light fire on my desk and then dump trash on my desk. And I know as an African-American woman, like, in all the conversations were, what did I do? Or how could I have changed my behavior? Or could I have asked him to ask? If that had been, the shoe had been on the other foot, there would have been no discussion. I would have been terminated. I can't do that now. And things have changed a lot in corporate workspace. I still could not go to somebody's desk and light something on fire, and people be like, oh, that's just Andrea being Andrea. She was just having a bad day. Like, so I had all that going on. And then at home, I was in an interracial marriage at the time. And while he was very loving, he expressed in so many ways when I spoke up for myself, rightfully so, that I was making trouble for myself. Like, so now I have no rest at work. I'm being harassed at work, and at home, I don't have the support that I need. And also with me making the decision to go to school, if I'm honest, I married someone where we're really good friends, and we have a pretty decent relationship. At the time, he just didn't understand like why I needed to go to the most expensive school in the state. He didn't believe that I could graduate. Not only did I graduate, I graduated early. But there were a lot of things there, again, because I was living for other people. At that point, I can 100% say that I wasn't doing anything that I want to do, from my career to how I presented physically to a lot of things. I was living for other people to fit a mold, to make sure that other people were comfortable. And what I realized about that period in my life is that everybody around me was comfortable and I was miserable. Now I don't care if you're uncomfortable, because I have to be happy. Like, you can choke on how uncomfortable you are with me. I don't care, because I'm a beautiful person. There's nothing wrong with me. If I wear my hair like this, or if it's straight, or if it's in whatever, it doesn't take away from what's in here. I'm still a professional. Like, some discussions that I would have entertained in my 20s, respectfully, I wouldn't entertain anymore. And that doesn't make me disrespectful or insubordinate. Like, you can wear your hair how you want to. Let me wear my hair. Like, why are we having this discussion? Like, certain discussions you don't even have with other people. And so it was just all of that, microaggressions and different things in my career. Like, it hit its head. And I was just like, I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't move my neck. You know what I mean? And I'm 30. I'm like, this is not it. I'm not going to survive like this. So I made the necessary changes, and I knew that it would be a short-term sacrifice and a long-term gain. So one of the questions that you asked is like, you know, what's a situation where you thought it was a downfall and it turned out? I never looked at it like that. I can tell you what I didn't expect is like what the healing would look like. What you don't expect is the lessons that you'll learn, like how that all looks. Like, I think like when you made your decision to take your package, like, you knew, like, you know, you had accepted a part of it, but what really came after that, the work that really came after that, like, that's the kind of stuff that you can't predict. Those are the things that, as much as you try to prepare yourself financially, mentally, spiritually, or whatever, like, stuff comes and it forces you to deal with it in transition. And I'm in a much, much better place, a much better place than I've ever been. And I'm proud of the work that I've done. So I'm
Yeah.
proud of the woman I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you reached a point, you took that stand for you, and then it became about you, and you really had to focus on, well, who am I, right? And who am I being, and how am I operating in this world, and what do I want to be doing? And yeah, and what's
Because again, if you're getting the same results, like, that's the point when you have to go, okay, like, if Kathy treats me like this, and John treats me like this, and Bill treats me like this, like, I can talk about Kathy, John, and Bill, but at some point you have to look in the mirror and say, well, the common denominator is, wow, like, they can't all be wrong or right, or what, you know, whatever conclusion you need to come to. Like, eventually you have to look in the mirror and say, self, what are you willing to sacrifice, or what are you willing to change, or what boundaries do you need to establish, or how do you need to show up differently, or maybe you need to take yourself out of some circles for a little bit. You know, maybe you have to sit at home. I was single and sat at home for about 2 years, and my dad would call me all the time, like, don't isolate yourself. And I'm like, I'm not isolating myself. But when you go through difficult times, and I'm sure you know this if you've ever been through divorce or job loss or something like that, initially people call and stuff like that, but they're not interested in you. They're interested in the story. And I don't have time for that. Like, and so anybody who really wasn't interested in me, who really wasn't interested in loving and honoring and respecting the person that I was, I made a decision that I didn't have to be around those people, and I didn't have to do things that didn't serve me anymore. And sometimes that requires you to be alone, but that doesn't mean you're lonely. And that was the best gift that I gave myself.
Yeah, it sounded like you needed to create that quiet space and really like disconnect from everything to figure out what was important to reconnect to, or what new connections you needed to make. Wow.
There were so many people telling me what I was. I didn't know what I was anymore, or who I was, or what I should be, or it was exhausting. I was just like, it really was like March 2013. I was just like, okay, everybody stop. I don't want anybody else's opinion. I don't care how you would have done it. I don't care what you think about it. I'm going to do it my way. You can agree or you cannot agree, but I've tried it your way. I've tried living for you. And the only one who's suffering is me. I love every single one of you, but I need you to give me some time. Which is another reason why I'm a good person to help people, and because I can give space and check on people in a way that, and I don't need to know the whole story or whatever. That's the beautiful thing I think that people miss in ministry, or when you work with people or you coach or whatever. Like, people think that you have to be a perfect person. You really don't. I think the more imperfect you are and the more looks that you have at different things make you more relatable to different types of people.
I'm so glad you shared that, because that's part of why I started this podcast. Was it's so easy from the outside to think everybody's got it figured out and that you don't. And it's easier to get, go internal and, kind of withdraw and not talk about those things. And so that's what I want to bring out in this podcast. So thank you for being so vulnerable and so authentic and open about that, because it's tough stuff. And someone today is going to listen to this and go, that's exactly what I need to do. That they're going to go, oh my gosh, that's me. I mean, I've had other interviewees who talk about, they had physically, you were saying you couldn't sleep and all this angst going on. I've had people that have had, major health illnesses and scares because they weren't paying attention to all the things that were going on. And they were so out of alignment with so many things in their world that it caused such a physical health issue as well as a mental health issue.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up now, because now I notice things in my body, to your point, in a much different way. Yes, I ignored a lot of things, and now when I feel it, I address it immediately. I move it. I write about it. I address it. Because I think that's the best path forward. You have to address even the darkest things. It's worth the work. It's worth the work. It's easy to blame others. It's easy to be a victim. But it's more rewarding on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Andrew, thank you so much. We could chat. I got all these questions for you, but we're just going to have to, I think, go to lunch or breakfast or here shortly, so I can catch up on all of that. But we probably do need to start wrapping up. So I have two wrap-up questions that I just am fascinated by. And the first is, when you look back now on your life and your career, what do you think served you best? And it can be a personality trait, a strength, habit, discipline. What do you think has served you best?
I think that passion, commitment, and integrity have served me best. I think that professionally and personally, people will tell you that if I'm committed to a cause, like, they know, they're not confused about it, and they know that I'm going to be there and I'm going to show up, I'm going to get the job done. I think integrity, it definitely, as I've gotten older, has served me. I've never really been popular. I'm known, but I've never really been popular. So popularity doesn't phase me in a way that some people do. And if you're wrong, I will call you out, because, and I don't care who you are. And it's something that a lot of people have told me that they admire. Like, I have come people like, do you know who that is? I'm like, they're wrong. Like, did you see the behavior? Like you're asking the wrong question. Did you see the behavior? Like, that's the bigger issue. Like, who they are doesn't matter to me. That said, I respect and pay homage to everybody, but if you're using your position in power in a way that hurts others, because it's not always beneficial to others, like, you don't want to say that, but if it's hurtful to others, every single time I'm gonna call you out on that. I'm gonna speak up for people, and I'm gonna speak up for myself. So I would say, yeah, those two things. And there's another question that you asked about what you're known for. And so I sent out some fillers to my group. And the other thing that came back from everyone, including my mother, is my ability to talk to people from all walks of life and be able to find a way to connect with them. And my mom told me in particular today, which surprised me, she said that I take others into consideration in a way that most people do not. I try to think holistically about, so if you and I were to have a conflict, I would be like, I'm angry at Kathy because da 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 da, but she's also right for feeling this way because of da da da. Like, I'm that person. And which I think helps guide me through conflict, because I'm not always just thinking about how I feel.
You can put yourself in someone else's shoes and someone else's perspective. So I always love when you ask other people about yourself, because we have so many blind spots and we really don't get it. And I in particular love mothers' perspectives, because they know you so well, right? And have seen you in so many ways.
I want to share this one with you because it touched me. This is from my first cousin. So, who's her mother and my mother are best friend, so she said, for me, empathy and clarity. You have empathy for others as God asks us to love our neighbor. You have clarity of achievement. Once you set a goal, you understand the assignment and what it takes to make it happen. Whether it's academic or professional, you know yourself and what you can do. It's like your brain defaults to SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, reasonable, time-based, so you can hold yourself accountable. You've been the truth since running track in high school to molding yourself into the community leader that you are now. And I was just like,
oh, I'm all goosebumpy. And that was just because you reached out and said, hey, can you give me some insight on
and so that's what my mom said the same thing. My best friend Amanda in New York said the same thing. They all said it in different ways, but it was nice to hear that today. Like, I really do make a difference. Like, it's my part of the world, but hey.
Yeah, so special. So special. Oh, well, I'm all excited because that is a gift to hear that and to get that kind of clarity, because now you can boldly go, wait a minute, what do I do with this now? And how do you put that in your blog and your travel and all the things that you're going to do? So, okay. So last question, because we do have to wrap up at some point. Any words of wisdom that impacted you over the years, or that you like to use either for yourself or that you like to share with others?
So the first thing that comes to mind, first thing that comes to my mind, first thing that came to my mind when you asked me is good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is your better and your better is your best. It's one thing my father always told me.
Wow.
The other thing that he always told me that sticks with me is begin with the end in mind. One thing that my mother always told me that sticks with me and holds me is pay yourself first. And the last one I will say that has served me: to thine own self be true.
Absolutely. When you 2013, that was the year of that, right?
Yes, but all the ladies, anybody, pay yourself first. Even if you have joint finances with your spouse, have a second account. I'm not trying to tell you how to manage your finances or how to like have an escape fund away from your husband or your wife or whatever. I'm not saying that. But you should pay yourself first. You should always have money for yourself and for your family. And I do believe that. I do.
Awesome. Well, Andrea, thank you. This has been such a pleasure, and it's ending on such a wonderful kind of clarity and aspiration and inspiration. So I'm so excited that we reconnected in the last weeks or so. And I am seriously got to go out and get some lunch or something, because yeah, I don't want this to just end today.
No.
Having a hard time closing. So, but we do need to close up. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, if you enjoyed today's interview, please subscribe below, and then you'll be alerted when other interviews are published. And if you have any questions for me or for Andrea, because I'll post all of her social media on my website, lifestorycurator.com, you can comment there, you can ask questions, but definitely want to highlight you there, Andrea, and you can make sure everybody knows how to get a hold of you. Again, that's lifestorycurator.com, and it'll be on the blog page. So on that note, I'll say stay safe, stay well, and let's keep sharing those stories. Have a great day.